What's up? We're live. God Theorist, what's happening? It's been a bit.
Hello, hello.
How are you, David? How's everything going?
Well, I just wanted to remind you that God's not dead, he's surely alive.
God not dead, it's truly alive.
Roaring like a lion.
It's weird. There's no songs about like the President of the United States isn't dead, he's
I know.
truly alive.
Gravity works, things fall when you drop them.
It roars like a lion. You should totally believe it. It never happens.
Definitely protesting too much.
Yeah, me thinks. Yes, this is God's Not Dead too. You'd think everything you've been talking about here, but actually, I think I have a cool psychological angle about this.
Oh,
So I want to talk about it.
well, all right. So, first of all, can we just address for a minute that if you're making a propaganda movie, which is what this is, right? This is a propaganda flick. If you're making one, why would the marketing choose April 1st, April Fool's Day?
I don't know, and the title of it is God's Not Dead too. April Fool.
April Fool's, he's super dead.
La, 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 la.
This movie takes place in Arkansas, by the way.
Little Rock, right?
Yeah.
It's their alma mater.
So that's fun. They all right, so God's Not Dead 2. He's surely alive, comma, he's roaring like a lion. Hit theaters this April 1st. And it brings into play Clarissa the Teenage Witch as
Which is another irony here.
right, as a devout Christian of a religion that believes that witches must be put to death.
Yeah.
She's here. Did you see God's Not Dead 1?
No, I saw parts of it.
Oh man, you missed out because I watched that. My friend Chris, you met him briefly when you were in Colorado. He
Yeah.
and I have this.
Wait, was that Chris Picha?
That's Chris Picha.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. We have this tradition of watching shitty Christian movies, like PureFlix movies, as a drinking game on Skype. So he'll be in China, I'll be here, but we'll be just getting. Let me put it this way: we tried to watch Left Behind, the Nicolas Cage with Left Behind. I can drink a lot. That's a thing I learned in Korea just because of all the alcohol. I can drink quite a lot before I'm done for the count. Like you might have experienced that. Like I don't. It takes a lot to put me under. I couldn't finish the movie. I ended up just throwing up in the bathroom and passing out.
Oh my God.
Because we were drinking every time they were doing an atheist straw man, and there were like two other things. It wasn't even that complex of a drinking game, but I was done. It was just nonstop alcohol that whole movie.
Oh, that does not sound fun.
No.
That's the point of a drinking game is to get pleasantly drunk, David.
Yes, but not Left Behind. No, but I was able to get through God's Not Dead, the original one. That was our first drinking game with Kevin Sorbo as the atheist professor he's an atheist in that he thinks God is real, but he hates him. So, like most atheists.
And I hate that it's the bad guy is a professor in college. Like, that just bugs me because it's not like you become a professor for the money. Nobody's like, oh, get that sweet 38,000 right out of PhD
Right out of
school.
PhD school?
Oh,
Start
so
paying off
good.
your student loans for 60 years?
Oh, totally worth it to change someone's mind and act like an asshole in class.
It's totally worth it to get revenge on God who killed my mom with cancer.
So the synopsis of this whole movie, everyone already knows it, right? Pretty much, it's a high school teacher
Yeah.
who
Grace.
Right, Grace, that's right. And she's asked a question. She's explicitly asked a question. Hey, you're talking about nonviolence, then you mean like Jesus? And she says yes. And then she quotes a scripture to validate that, some evidence. And then
they're talking about Martin Luther King Jr. and Gandhi, and someone's like, one of the kids says, "Isn't that like Jesus when he said this?" And Melissa Jones Hart, Grace said, "Yes, that is like Jesus. Martin Luther King Jr. was a Christian, and so his views influenced his beliefs. Jesus said this," and she quoted the Bible. So some meddling kid pulls out her phone or his phone and starts texting the the authorities. Next thing we know, she's getting fired because she's preaching Christianity to her students.
I love how many times you see like police in this, like hauling people away. I'm like, wait, is this illegal? Like, what is going on here?
Right.
The law has been. Unless you're an asshole like Kim Davis and like won't do your job, and even then, like they were super polite to her.
Oh yeah,
they're like, "Oh, we're gonna throw you in jail for a long time." Just kidding, a couple days, you're out.
It's so. Yeah, first of all, that's bullshit. What would happen if this actually happened? And again, I teach in the very conservative Christian area of Colorado Springs, right? So I know, I'm very familiar with the laws regarding what teachers are not allowed to say. Here's what would have happened. Student complains to parent, that checks out. Parent complains to school board, that checks out. That could happen. School board asks her, "Hey, we heard you were teaching in class. What did you say exactly?" She says, "Somebody brought up Jesus in the Bible and said, isn't that like Martin Luther King?" And I said, "Yes, this quote," and just tell them what happened, and they would have said, "Oh, cool, all right," and that's where it would have ended. That's the end of it. That's
they wouldn't have revoked your license.
Nope. They wouldn't have tried to fire me. They wouldn't have tried
trial.
In fact, a couple days ago, we were reading Voltaire, and there's only one good character in Candide, right? There's like one awesome good character. He's an Anabaptist, which is a persecuted minority sect in Europe, and he's like a nice person. He's the only person who shows any kind of Christian charity to Candide. And I'm like, "Hey, does that remind you of anything?" And they're like, "Yeah, the Good Samaritan." And I say, exactly. Voltaire knew his audience. He knew the frame of reference. That he knew most people knew the Bible. He was doing this deliberately. That is completely within my purview, and that's way more than what she did, because she didn't even bring it up.
Well, so what's your new job?
Well, now I'm a atheist blogger, and no, it's complete nonsense. From, first of all, oh man, did you read like the nuances of like how they juiced up that campaign? Like, no. So they call in the ACLU because, I guess the Freedom from Religion Foundation was busy, so it was the ACLU that was filing the lawsuit, and they wouldn't. First of all, you grew up in Arkansas, right? Like,
yeah.
We had teachers there that would actively proselytize in school.
Oh yeah.
Right? So
oh, yeah.
That's not different now. The ACLU and the FFRF are way too busy dealing with actual cases of proselytizing in schools to even lodge a complaint with a school over this trivial mention of Jesus bullshit. But anyway, they come in, and the first thing that happens, the school board's like, "Well, did you mention Jesus in your classroom?" And she's like, "Yeah, bud." And she's like, "How could you? Oh, come on." Like, they immediately turn on her. They would be on her side. The school board, the teachers unions, they don't want the teacher to be fired. They always take their side against the ACLU. That's their job.
Dude, yeah, down in Arkansas. I want to just underline that, which is where this film supposedly takes place, the fictional place. Well, we have friends in Northwest Arkansas right now battling a school board about a religious type matter. This is not, they're entrenched, buddy. Like, Christians.
They would never side with the FFRF or the ACLU on that.
I know. What were you thinking?
What actually happens in real life when these things happen is the school district gets sued. But in this movie, they made a sweetheart deal with the board, and they're like, "Hey, if you make sure to fire her, we'll only sue her, and you guys won't be touched." That's not how that can't happen. That's not how it happens. When she was teaching, she was working as an agent for the school, so you can't just have a special plea deal just for her. And then the ACLU's attorney tells the kid's parents of the kid in their class that if they agree to sue her, the daughter will be granted guaranteed admission to Stanford. And they receive a huge settlement from the school. And so the parents, even though the daughter doesn't want to sue her teacher and has become a Christian because her teacher actually was proselytizing to her after class. So the daughter's a Christian, doesn't want to sue the teacher, but the parents are like, "Oh, we'll get tons of money and a huge settlement." That doesn't happen either. If you sue the school over this stuff, you become not someone to envy. You become, like, they usually change your name to protect your identity because Christian communities will destroy you. They call you Jane Doe in the hearing because you'll be singled out in the middle of Arkansas as the atheist scolding the lovable teacher or suing her. That is not a position that people want to be in. And the establishment cause cases are usually just nominal damages or no damages, just an injunction preventing schools from doing similar lawsuits in the future. It's not this like fame and fortune that they're painting it as in this movie.
It's you can tell anyone who wrote this. That's the thing I ask myself sometimes. Probably a lot of people do. I see these things and I'm like, now, did the writers really believe that, or did they kind of be like, okay, well, we know this is a little ham, but this is what everyone kind of wants to see. I cannot figure that out. I watched an interview with the writer, and a couple, like the director and a couple of the actors, and they all seem pretty in on the idea. They're like, "Hey, man, it's a war," and I'm like, "Oh, stop saying that. That's a really horrible thing to say against other Americans."
So then they this is where it just becomes ludicrous, because they're questioning people, blah blah blah, and again, this would never have gone to court. This just wouldn't have happened. But then she tells her lawyer, "Hey, I've got a brilliant idea. If we can prove Jesus actually existed, then I'm just discussing a historical figure in a history class, and it's fine." And so the whole courtroom becomes putting God on trial and trying to prove that Jesus was really, really real. And the lawyer's like, "Yeah, that's a super cool idea." That's like, and so they bring in all these apologists who are like proving that Jesus was a historical person, which, whatever, that's a debate that's got nothing to do with this, but for some reason it becomes the main crux of the issue. And eventually, like any courtroom drama, once all the facts are stacked up, then we get to find out whether she's guilty or innocent. And should we do a spoiler warning? Do people even give a shit?
I think we could probably guess that she's guilty and she goes to jail and dies.
Yep. No. Well, that's what would have happened, except for magic, because they did like a phone text thing, and then the newsies, the newsboys, the newsy boys, are they a real band? Is this something that people listen to, or?
That is something I can't figure out.
I feel like they're a real band, but anyway, they're at a concert, a packed concert, of course, because they're really popular.
Yeah, right, of course.
they're like, "Hey, we just got an email, text message, phone alert, and one of our friends is in court because she believes in Jesus. So we need you all to pray."
And they're like, "Again?"
Oh. If I had $1 every time someone's persecuted for their religious beliefs in this country,
then I'd have $0. Oh, yeah.
So they all pray. The whole concert prays, and then the narrative of the film leads us to believe that the prayers soften the heart of the jury, and she is acquitted of her vile proselytizing. She seems to be doing, just not in the classroom. She's like, after school, she has convinced this girl to become a Christian. That's
Can I just mention that? I mean, it's probably a really cool, like the trailer, the music really picks up here whenever they, they're like, "Hey, we're in a concert to trillions of people, gazillions of people." And then it shows, it's like, "Hey, we could fight, we could stand, this is a war." And then they just start jamming out on this electric guitar. And for me, being a non-believer, this is a very strange moment, because all you expect people to be, I don't know, shooting guns or like training montage, but they all just close their eyes and bow their heads down, and they're totally quiet. Like, if you're a Christian, that makes sense. It's like, oh, it's a power magic happening. It's a magical power. Yeah. But if you're like someone like me, I'm like, you just literally decided to do nothing. Like, this is not the climax of the song.
Started wishing really hard.
Like, yeah, the fact that people bow their heads and close their eyes is, somewhat arbitrary. Obviously, there's psychological reasons, but like, you might as well have someone be like, "Are you ready?" And they're like, "Yeah," and they have all this war gear on, and then they both like just kind of lay down sideways and put one hand up. And they just lay there for the next 16 minutes like that. And you're just like, I don't understand why the music's freaking out right now. They're kind of not doing anything. So
yeah, it'd be really hard to announce that are unfamiliar with Christianity. Like if somebody just showed up from another planet, to understand why the stakes are so high at this point.
Yeah. And what they're doing. Like, I get it. You believe that praying helps, but it's just hilarious if you know that it doesn't.
So
like, why are you just closing your eyes? Get up and do something. Like, I don't even agree with the point of your war, but what are you doing?
This movie's ludicrous, but on any level, from a filmmaking standpoint to a that's not how life works standpoint. It's just not how things happen. But I want to talk about why these movies keep getting made, and it's not just because they're low budget films that give you millions of dollars in profit, because yes, that's why they keep being made, but what's the root of that? Like, why are they so profitable? Why do people keep going to see them? And I want to do some quotes at you, some Jesus quotes, if you will. This is what you and I grew up with as in Bible Belt Christianity in the South, as in Mormonism and whatever flavor of Christian you were before you were Mormon. This is what we were raised on. Let me see if this sounds familiar to you. Jesus says this: "If anyone wishes to come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." Peter says this, "To this you were called, because Christ suffered for you, leaving you an example that you should follow in his footsteps." Jesus said, "A slave is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you." They have this milieu of, if you're being persecuted, it means you're Christianing right. It means you're doing a good job as a Christian. Which, what's the corollary there?
That if you're not being persecuted, you're not doing good.
Yeah, so what happens when you live in a country like the United States as a Christian where everything's already catering to you? The whole nation is comprised of mostly you, and everything kind of favors you. Like, businesses close on Sunday because of you. Everything is around you. So what happens if you are not being martyrdom? You have to fabricate your own martyrdom, and that's what makes these movies so popular.
That's what's been so interesting. You hear like Nietzsche talk about the slave morality, right? That's kind of dictating a lot of Western culture right now, not right now in general. And it's curious because like the hypothesis is that the Jews were persecuted, and so they developed a moral system under that. Like, you cannot serve two masters. It talks about the work they do, like throwing out net to catch fish. It's very like blue collar. It resonates with those people that are kind of under the boot heel of another greater culture or whatever, or larger culture, I should say, more powerful culture, not greater, because that's a little cited, but And then it's interesting because that helped them get out, right? It teaches you to be the best, but turn the other cheek. It teaches you to be the best possible, like low on the totem pole person possible. So it's hilarious. It doesn't teach you how to be a good person high on the totem pole. So you see these people who are just fucking assholes at the top of the list because they have no morality dictating their superior position, right? It doesn't say anything about like when you grow a huge company and have hundreds of thousands of people underneath you, don't be a dick by making them pray every morning because they may have different gods. It doesn't say anything like that. So I don't know. It's interesting seeing it through that lens.
Oh, they gush over it. It's insane because they have to fabricate, like, most people's fantasies are power fantasies, but when you're in power, but you feel like you should be being persecuted, they fabricate these movies that just don't make any sense. Like, this movie is essentially Miracle on 34th Street, right? Like, they're trying to prove that Miracle on 34th Street, where they try and prove Santa's real in court, but now they're trying to prove Jesus is real in court, which the irony is not lost on me, but I think it is on them that this is basically a ripoff of proving Santa real in court. But like, the ACLU lawyer says, we're going to prove once and for all that God is dead. Like, they just have boners for just destroying the evangelical position, and they want to be guilty in something in the sense that Jesus was guilty, right? Like, he was crucified by the government, so he was hung up there, and it's fine. Nobody cares. Nobody gives two shits if you're Christian. Just, don't be a dick about it.
Why are the bad guys here? Yeah, they're all straw men. Like that guy's like, I hate everything your people represent.
I saw somebody live tweeting this, and they made the observation that everybody that's attractive ends up being Christian. It's like, oh, attractive character, she's a Christian. Oh, attractive Christian. And there might be one that's like throwing there as a straw man. Like, there's a last minute jurist that comes in, and she's got tattoos and dyed hair. So it's like, oh, she's probably an atheist. But in the end, it's revealed that she was a Christian the whole time. Stop judging people based on their appearances. Well, that's what you've trained us in this movie. Everyone that's attractive and happy is a Christian. Everyone that's like angry and mean is an atheist.
I know this doesn't help. This doesn't help because it's more this divisiveness that we just don't need. Like, these. I mean, I even get onto our own side about this sometimes whenever they're like, oh man, every Christian is like this. And I'm like, well, not all of them. I mean, think about you when you were a Christian, if they converted, and you were a reasonable person. You just said douchey stuff sometimes because you had no filter on your mouth or ever thought about anything you said through a lens of, is this really true? So, it makes some sense. But, yeah, I think it's dangerous. It's dangerous, this idea that they're propagating, whether the developers meant it or not, whether they meant or thought that this could actually happen to someone who just did something perfectly normal in the classroom. If they didn't, then they're still complicit here because most of their audience, I think, does. They do think that this is how it would. This is a real scenario, right? This is a believable.
Yeah, when you have words like "we're at war," like they have a scene where all the pastors are like telling their parishioners to gear up because we're at war. There's a war on Christianity right now. Like a war, really? You're going to use that? You're going to use that term? You're going to cause fear in people? Like that's on purpose. You don't write that line, we're at war, Christianity's at war, or there's a war on Christianity right now without trying to scare people. That's not an accident. Neil Carter, who on Twitter, he's at Godless and Dixie. He has an interesting observation. He says, I submit that the heart of Christianity isn't love, it's victimhood. Even their definitions of love are tinged with elements of martyrdom.
No, I agree. There's we talked about the psychology of victimhood the other day, and actually, it came rushing in my mind here too, because of the fact that like Robert Zur, not Robert Zur, what's his name? Oh yeah, Ofer Zur, the guy who studies victimhood, and I hate using this because the right uses this a lot. No, I'm sorry. The right uses this a lot for blaming, I don't know, poor people. They're like, oh, victimization, and I'm like, no, stop. There are people who are actually victims, but that's not who these people are talking about. That's not who Dr. Zur is talking about. He's not talking about the people who are actually victims. Obviously, there are people who are black people being shot by the cops. That's their victims.
But if you're feeding yourselves to the lions, you're not a martyr. You're just an idiot.
Yeah, but that's not what anyone here is talking about. What we're talking about is people who are taking that stance because it gives them something extra when they're not the victims, like Christians. And like one of the things he says that stands out to me the most is he says the victim stance is a powerful one. The victim is always morally right, neither responsible nor accountable, and forever entitled to sympathy. Like, obviously, if you ever stumble upon that narrative for yourself and you find out how useful it is, you're going to use it again. I mean, most of the time when we do things, we don't think them through. Humans, we just don't. Like, that's axiomatic. I don't even need a citation for that, because you can't go anywhere in a psychology conference and say otherwise without people calling you an idiot, because we just don't. Like, there's no evidence to believe we think about things very often, I'm saying, in comparison to when you do. So the ratio. And so people are going to adopt this narrative when it's useful without actually thinking about it. It's like, whenever you stop people and you're like, what are you doing? Look how far you've come in this business, and you've, ruined all the people underneath you or whatever. People can go decades without ever having to think about the repercussions of their actions or why they're doing things.
Yeah, the lyrics in the song at the end of the movie, the big climactic song, if serving you is against the law of man, if living out my faith in you is banned, then I'll stand right before the jury. If saying I believe is out of line, if I'm judged because I'm going to give my life to show the world the love that fills me, then I want to be guilty. And that's just it. They create these suppositional, if this is banned, if my faith is banned, if serving you is against the law of man, I want to be guilty. Fine, but it's not. It never will be. The First Amendment, or the First Amendment and the Second Amendment, like the Bill of Rights, they protect you from that. So just settle down. You're not going to be persecuted.
Yeah, and I'd argue that. Hey, you back?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah. I had a little internet issue. It's yours or mine, I'm not sure.
Oh, where'd you cut off?
No, I heard you said it's fine, but it's just not.
Okay.
Second Amendment protects you.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's like we're living in a more pluralistic society, and they're losing a lot of their entitlements, and they just decide that that's persecution now. Like, when you're accustomed to privilege, equality feels like oppression, right? Because it's less than what you were accustomed to.
So this is my very problem. This is an underarching problem that I have with the far right and the far left as well. And I'd like to consider myself far left. I mean, I'm voting for Bernie Sanders. That's pretty left. But I'm repeatedly reminded that I'm not far enough left, apparently. Because, I feel bad for people who are, victims, and I try to help them. And I just have, a bleeding heart, I guess you'd characterize this as. But I'm reminded by people placing themselves, or people using one metric to determine whether something is wrong, and it's how it feels. This is called emotional reasoning, right? It's like whenever somebody said, when Bernie, or I don't care who says this, any popular person has said something is crazy, and then people go, whoa, you can't use that term. It's it's ableist, it's blah 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 blah. And I'm like, well, hang on. I mean, we can't just react to our knee jerk, right? That feeling that we heard a word said, and that context in no way excuses it. Even if I did concede that the word crazy is at all offensive to anyone. I mean, we use it on a regular basis in my field, and we are very passionate about helping people. So I don't concede that. But Same thing here. If you feel persecuted, it doesn't mean you're persecuted. That's emotional reasoning, and it's you cannot use that, right? It's a fallacy, but it's also dangerous for psychological health. So if you feel persecuted, stop, take a step back, look at it objectively, right? That's what you have to do, and then determine from there what the hell's going on. Like, so the far left and far right both use this, and it bugs the shit out of me.
Yeah, it's fascinating just to see how popular these movies are and how bad they are. They're just bad, like just on a filmmaking level. And I don't know. It's, as a teacher, this is not something that keeps me awake at night, is being put on trial for referencing something Jesus said.
And let me go a step further here, because this isn't just intellectually dangerous, right? We've kind of talked about that, but this is actually factually and really dangerous to cause divisiveness like this. I don't know if you're familiar with the Robbers Cave experiment, Sharif. I think we've talked about it before, but so this just goes to about how when you create groups and you start like trying to draw the line between them, it's incredibly dangerous. I mean, look at this shit, like the Sanders versus Trump people that's been happening, where people are walking out bloodied and like, taken off on stretchers because of these, just small political differences. I mean, not small, I guess, in the case of Trump, but in the length of things, we're not in a third world country where we're fighting for our food here. We're talking about how to govern a great nation. We're not talking about you literally trying to axe my kids or something, right? We're talking about a political difference on trickle-down economics. Let's put this in perspective. Punching someone in the face is probably not the answer to that.
Right.
It's obviously very important, but it's not life or death in the literal immediate sense. So anyway, so Sharif's Robbers Cave experiments. This is the one where they took those boys, these, what were they, 4th grade boys or something? No, 12 years of age. Yeah, so probably like 6th grade. And they took them, and these are kids from like lower middle class, Protestant backgrounds, like your typical American boy that people think of in the 1950s, because this was 1954, right? Leave It to Beavers. Took a bunch of these kids together, 22 of them, and then they randomly split them in groups. And then from there, they did a little control. They made sure everyone was like kind of about, for every super popular Zach Morris, they'd have to get one on the other side. And for every like, AC Slater buff guy, they had to get one on the other side. So they did some control because there'd be competition. But other than that, they pretty much made it random. And these people never met each other, okay? These little boys never met each other. And they split them up into 2 separate camps. The boys did some things indigenously that are very interesting. First, they named their group. So labels, right? One was the Eagles, one was the Rattlers. They were like, we're the Eagles. And the other one, without knowing anything about the other guys and how they named themselves, they named themselves the Rattlers, or the Eagles and the Rattlers, yeah. Camps, they had never seen each other. They still haven't seen each other. Their camps are way far apart. They meet each other for the first time inside of a mess hall or chow hall. What would you call that? A
mess hall?
Yeah, like a dining hall. And they're sitting there, and they start like goading each other and like making mean comments, right? And like throwing gum at each other. Like they start getting pretty pissy, and then they even express their desire after the first lunch to not have dinner together. They don't want to be they want to be segregated. They don't want to be integrated, these groups, right? So already, like, just knowing that you're in a different group by label alone, right? Not religious ideas, political ideals, that will make it worse, I'd imagine. But just knowing that they were so divisive, right? There's actual behavioral consequences to drawing a line in the sand. And then the things where this is just the part where they just hung out together and they built a group with one another. Stage 2 was them moving and having some competition against one another. And that's where things went nuts. So over the next like 5 or so days, they had, these trophies on the line, and they'd have to do things like swimming. What was all of them? It's really irrelevant. They had competitions they had to use. And at this point, they started getting even more divisive in their behaviors. Like they put up a, keep the Rattlers out or no Rattlers allowed, that kind of thing. They made flags for each other, for their own teams. Like you're already being, your whole identity is becoming, I am not them, right? And we are better than them. Yeah, so let me see. They can't remember the exact next part, but okay. So the problem is things got so crazy at this point that they actually they move straight into the reintegration phase, where they go, all right, so these things are getting crazy. These boys are super divisive and they're being somewhat harmful. And I'm sorry if you can hear a lawnmower out there. I don't know what's going on. Probably someone mowing a lawn. But Yeah, so then they moved to reintegration phase, and first they tried to just use contact together. You hear things like, "Oh, well, just put them in the same room and they'll hash it out." Yeah, don't do that. Things got worse just by exposing themselves to one another. The way they had to do it was they moved forward by getting a common goal. So they made them have to solve problems together, and that naturally caused them to sort of re-identify as boys in a camp rather than rattlers and eagles. So the point I'm making here is that even little kids got kind of murdery after a while because they had little pocket knives, which I don't think was a good idea. That was part of the.
But it was the 50s.
It was the 50s, yeah. Little boys need pocket knives, right? So anyway, you get the point. It's not only are you going to have bad, and they call each other bad words and stuff, and they were just being little dicks to each other for no reason, right? I mean, other than human psychology. So that's what's so terrifying about these movies is they're painting not only as the group as another, right, others, but also as very different in goal. So we'll never work together, right, on these issues. And they paint them as aggressive and hostile, which has psychological reactance, right? Like someone's hostile towards you, you're going to be like, well, fuck you, buddy. So yeah, these things aren't happening. So it's creating this useful fiction that I don't think the audience understands is a fiction. This isn't happening. This is how it may feel to you that like atheists are out to get you, but they're not. So fucking chill.
Yeah, settle down.
Ugh, I don't know. That's my whole thing.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. And don't let me paint with too large a brush. A lot of Christians have denounced this movie already. Said it's stupid. Said it's a bad film. It's divisive. It's. I've got I know plenty of Christians who are never going to see this movie, but that's anecdotally. I predict the way this movie will be received is it will make a lot of money and they might make a third one. So even if a lot of Christians are against it, there's enough of them who are going to see this movie that it's cause for concern.
Yeah, exactly. And no one's really afraid of the moderate Christians. I mean, like if you come to a moderate Christian, most moderate Christians have, probably non-believing friends that just by their nature, they're not that exclusive, right? But I'm more concerned about the Donald Trump fans out there who are willing to punch someone in and around the face for having a different political ideal, much less a idea of what happens in the future and their kids are at stake. So I don't know. For me, not even for me, just research shows that this is probably not something we should be real excited about. And just fucking don't. Like, you can make a movie about dinosaurs. We live in like the richest nation in the world. All you got to do is they're making a movie about machines that beat up monsters from the sea. Pacific Rim 2's coming out. I'm watching that shit. Like, there's no end to the narratives you can chase down in Hollywood right now. Why make it one that can actually get people in trouble? Like, there's parents right now, you probably know some, that are afraid to out their own kid as a non-believer because they're afraid that the kid won't get invited to anything.
Right.
There are real consequences to this shit.
Yeah, it's bad art, and more importantly, it's morally suspect to prey on people's tendencies to divide and turn against each other.
Conquer. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's our haven't seen the movie review of God's Not Dead 2.
Which is something I don't plan to remedy at any point.
I will be seeing it when it comes out on non-theater, so I can drinking game my way through it. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'll download it. Yeah, we should do like an online drinking thing. And just cleanse ourselves the next 5 days, probably.
Because it's pretty terrible from the previews. From the previews and the clips I've seen on YouTube, it looks just so awful. And this is coming from somebody who's planning to see Batman versus Superman later today.
Let's put that in context. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and give that. When I say this movie looks terrible, I am also willing to spend $8 on a movie that's at 22% on Rotten Tomatoes right now. So
let me just. So if you're making a trailer, David, or maybe if you've seen a couple, at the very end of one, that's where you put your kind of last moment chance to get this person to come watch this movie, right? It's usually like a big moment, like a superhero reveal if it's a superhero movie, or it's a hilarious line that someone says or whatever. So on God's Not Dead, the official trailer 2, this is the ending point, and this is the kind of audience you're shooting for, that this is going to resonate with them. They're in the courtroom. One of the jury members sneezes. One of the other jury members says, "God bless you," and he says, "Careful, you might be on trial next."
Oh,
what the fuck? Oh God, this pisses me off so bad. Get your shit together.
I don't let my kids say "God bless you" in my class.
No, you gotta put them on trial. I call a lawyer. I tell them because
I actually make them say it in French because it's a fucking French class, not because I'm out to destroy God and your ability to worship Him.
Atiswade, that doesn't have God in it, does it?
Right. To your wishes.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Like,
I never knew what that meant.
Like there's a tiny genie living in your nose, and he grants wishes when you sneeze.
Oh, wow, good for him.
No, it's like bless you, but it takes the supernatural out of it and just says like, I hope everything works out well for you. That's
why does sneezing prompt that?
Oh, well, because sneezing usually prompts death for most of human history. So they're like, oh man, I hope you're gonna pull through, man.
That's so like fatalistic.
Like, well, you survive a bubonic plague and see how fatalistic your language becomes.
Yeah, fair enough.
but yeah, it's pretty bad. It's God damn it, it's pretty terrible.
And it's got real world consequences. That's my whole point here. It's so shitty.
So, yeah, God's Not Dead 2 coming to a theater near you yesterday, April Fool's Day.
Yeah, hilarious. But well, all right. I guess that pretty much wraps up the episode. We didn't get any feedback this week, so maybe we should skip that section. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll just see you guys next week when we return with whatever we'll be talking about.
Yeah. Oh, I need to call that philosopher, by the way. Get him back on here. Psychology of violence. Oh, sorry, the philosophy of legitimized violence. That's something I'm excited to talk about. I will straight up punch someone in the face if
it's legitimate.
I've been long thought that like if some guy, and this is, I'm not saying a long thought means it's right. I mean, I've always held this belief for some reason that like if I'm walking through a bar and some guy hits my wife's butt, I'm punching him in the face. But then I was like, wait, maybe I shouldn't. Just the other day.
Yeah, no, we had some kind of conversation about that, and I was like, well, then punch him in the face. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, because I was like, big man behind the monitor. This asshole would never talk like this to my face. What a dick. Like, you can't say this shit to someone you can only get away with this on the internet. And you're like, let me get away with it. I was like, I was like, he get his ass kicked. And you were like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, you need to beat someone up for their adverse opinion of you. Like, no, you know what I mean? You're like, I don't think I do. And I was like, I don't know if I do either.
Yeah, so we're gonna take a close examination of, is violence okay? Is that just hippie bullshit that's never okay? Are there situations where it is? What are those situations? And should you get punched in the face if you see the kind of things on Facebook that you wouldn't say in real life?
No, I'll tell you, I want to. Sometimes some of these dicks, I don't mind disagreements, but when people are like actively being a dick fuck to you, we're earning that mature rating. But it makes me so mad, man.
Oh,
like
your Facebook seems to attract the worst people. Like I read some of your comments and I'm like, holy shit, that's hostile. Like it just came out of nowhere. This person is a dick, and it just comes out of nowhere. It's just like, normally things escalate over time in an argument, right? Like this guy comes in at 11 and is just saying things that would not be okay to say in real life.
Yeah, so there you go. Psychology the philosophy of legitimized violence, I guess. But all right. Well, cool. Hopefully next week I'll give him a call and I'll let you guys know. Well, I'll probably just either make the episode or not. So see you dudes later.
Bye.